When Passover arrives, the kosher landscape tightens in a way unmatched by any other time of year. Foods that are perfectly kosher during the rest of the calendar suddenly face new scrutiny. Ingredients that would never provoke a question in February can become sources of intense discussion during Pesach. And so, as precision-fermented foods enter the mainstream, casein, whey, enzymes, fats, and flavor molecules created entirely through microbial processes, the halakhic world naturally asks, how do these new technologies fit into the framework of Chametz, kitniyot, and the highly demanding standards that characterize the holiday? What makes this question particularly fascinating is that Pesach halacha, with its emphasis on both substance and process, aligns surprisingly well with the logic of precision fermentation. Many of the factors that complicate ordinary kosher certification, animal derivation, dairy status, meat mixtures, are absent. Yet Pesach introduces an entirely different type of concern. What fed the microbes? What substrates carried the genetic information? What sugars nourished the fermentation? What equipment processed the broth? And were any of those materials sourced from wheat, barley, oats, spelt, or rye? Precision fermentation relies heavily on sugars as feedstock: glucose, sucrose, dextrose, sometimes maltodextrin. Outside of Pesach, virtually any of these could be kosher, if properly supervised. But on Pesach, the question opens dramatically. Were these sugars derived from wheat starch or barley malt? If so, even though the final product contains no visible grain, the substrate could introduce Chametz concerns. Rabbinic authorities examining these products would insist on full documentation of sugar origin and processing. The good news is that modern industrial sugars are overwhelmingly produced from cane, beet, or corn, while kitniyot for Ashkenazim is not Chametz. This means many precision fermentation systems already align with Pesach requirements, or could do so with modest adjustments. Yeast and microbes also raise important questions. The organisms themselves are not Chametz. They are microscopic life forms that halacha does not classify as grains. But they may be grown initially on starter media containing grain derivatives. Kashrut agencies reviewing precision-fermented proteins for Passover would therefore investigate the entire lineage of the production strain, not because the organism becomes Chametz, but to ensure no Chametz-based nutrients persist or carry over into the production environment. Fortunately, biotech companies increasingly use synthetic or fully plant-based nutrient broths because they offer better reproducibility and eliminate allergen risks. This shift aligns beautifully with Pesach halacha. Eliminating grain inputs simplifies certification and lowers the chance of hidden Chametz. There is also the question of processing substrates, the amino acids, vitamins, anti-foaming agents, and buffers used during fermentation. Many of these are chemically synthesized. Others come from microbial or plant origins. But a few, especially older industrial forms of vitamins B and E or certain fermentation adjuncts, have historically relied on wheat-based carriers. Pesach certification requires that every microingredient be confirmed Chametz-free. And yet here again, modern technology works in halacha's favor. Many biotech manufacturers have already transitioned to vegan or synthetic variants that avoid grain carriers entirely. This brings us to an even broader point: precedent. Halacha has a long tradition of responding to new technologies on Pesach with clarity rather than alarm. When citric acid and ascorbic acid first entered the food supply in the 20th century, rabbis had to determine whether microbial fermentation of sugar-based feedstock posed Chametz concerns. The conclusion, after careful study, was that fermentation products are judged by the ingredients, not the sensory similarity. If the feedstock was free of Chametz, the acid was kosher for Passover. Precision fermentation today is simply a much more sophisticated version of that same question. Similarly, when enzymatic processing became common, using microbial rennet, amylase, protease, halakhic authorities again investigated the culture media. Once it was clear that the organisms could be grown on non-Chametz substrates, the resulting enzymes could be certified for Pesach. The principles learned then map almost perfectly onto today's novel foods. So, what might actual Pesach certification of precision-fermented products look like? The process would involve a few core elements. Inspecting the sugar sources with absolute precision. Cane and beet sugar are naturally acceptable. Corn glucose might raise kitniyot considerations for Ashkenazim, but not Chametz issues. Wheat, or barley-derived sugars, however, would be prohibited. Tracing fermentation nutrients, verifying that every amino acid, vitamin, and mineral additive is free of Chametz contamination, especially at the early stages of strain development. Reviewing genetic engineering steps to ensure that plasmids or carriers used in engineering were not propagated on Chametz media. Most modern labs use synthetic media anyway, making this requirement easier than in previous eras. Inspecting facilities for cross-contamination risks. Fermentation tanks are typically stainless steel and easily kosherable, aligning well with Pesach cleaning standards. Confirming downstream processing aids, membranes, resins, enzymes are Chametz-free. Many are medical grade and entirely synthetic, again simplifying Pesach certification. Ensuring packaging and flavorings avoid Chametz-based alcohols or extracts. None of these concerns indicate a fundamental barrier. They simply reflect the level of detail halacha always applies during Pesach certification. The structure of precision fermentation lends itself well to that scrutiny. Closed systems, documented supply chains, and laboratory-grade consistency make it easier, not harder, to track the full ancestry of every ingredient. In fact, the most positive development is that precision-fermented foods could actually expand the landscape of kosher for Pesach options. Imagine pareve cheese or milk that contains no dairy, no kitniat, no chametz, no animal enzymes, and no contamination pathways. Imagine high-protein foods for hospitals, elderly individuals, or people with dietary restrictions that maintain Pesach standards without relying on grain-like substitutes. Imagine Passover meals that can incorporate creamy sauces, yogurt-like textures, or cheese-like components without any risk of chametz or dairy complications. The overlap between Pesach and Biotech is not a point of tension. It may become a source of new possibility. In the end, the question of precision-fermented foods on Pesach highlights halacha at its most adaptable. Chametz remains prohibited with full force. But the tools to prevent it, meticulous inspection, detailed ingredient tracing, careful facility review, fit naturally within the precision and transparency that modern fermentation science already demands. The alignment is striking, and it suggests that with proper certification, many precision-fermented foods can not only meet Pesach standards, but even enhance the holiday experience. Pesach has always required creativity and rigor. Precision fermentation brings both to the table, literally, while opening a future where halakhic integrity and technological innovation support each other with increasing harmony.